This Central Ohio Worker Center video focuses on how many of the most important rights we have as Americans were achieved through the heroic efforts of ordinary people, students and the elderly, factory and domestic workers, miners and the unemployed, agricultural workers and clergy, to name a few. Their story is your story. It belongs to all of us. People just like you made history in their schools, in their workplaces, in their neighborhoods, and in voting booths across the United States. You can do the same when you know your rights, where those rights came from, and how to enforce them.
Hello, I'm Melissa Cropper, President of the Ohio Federation of Teachers and Secretary-Treasurer of the Ohio AFL-CIO. This Central Ohio Worker Center video highlights the rights of young workers, the right to unionize, and the right to be free of unlawful discrimination at work. In the process, we will learn about the historical connections between the movements for civil rights and labor rights, what those movements accomplished for all of us, and how you can get involved today.
State and federal labor laws protect young people who work. These laws recognize that work can be economically necessary and valuable for young people. But education, spending time with family and friends, and having fun is also important. That was not always the case. From the earliest days of the Republic, children worked in shops, fields, and in the home. In southern states where slavery existed, Black children were forced to work against their will under brutal conditions with the threat of physical punishment or death. After the Civil War, millions of young boys and girls worked in mines, factories, mills, shops, on farms, and out of their homes. The 1870 census found that 1 of every 8 children was employed. This rate increased to more than 1 in 5 children by 1900, including children under the age of 10. Wages were very low. In the textile industry, for example, adult men earned $6 to $7 a week, while children could be hired for only $2 a week. Children also worked in the Southern sharecropper system that permitted laborers to keep a small portion of what they grew, but denied them wages. In some industries, children regularly worked at night rather than sleeping. Like their parents who worked extremely long hours for little money, young people and children were taken advantage of, forced to work in unsafe conditions, and frequently were injured or even killed on the job.
Just like today, American history is full of examples of ordinary people standing up for themselves and helping one another secure rights for everyone. As far back as 1836, the National Trades Union called for a minimum age requirement for factory workers. Organizations like the National Child Labor Committee, founded by a clergyman at the beginning of the 20th century, advocated for legislation to protect children workers. Other organizations and activists were part of the movement, and young workers themselves demanded fair treatment and a better life. In 1903, at least 10,000 child laborers walked off the job during a strike at a mill in Kensington, Pennsylvania. The famous union organizer, Mary Harris Mother Jones, took up their cause and organized rallies and marches with young workers at the center, many of whom had lost fingers and others who had been horribly injured at work. It would take years of commitment, organizing, and solidarity, but eventually, state legislatures and Congress passed sweeping reform laws to protect young people in the workplace and to assure that they could attend school and develop their skills and talents as human beings.
In 1921, Ohio passed the Byng Act, requiring all children between the ages of 8 and 18, with limited exceptions, to attend school. In 1938, Congress passed the child labor law provisions of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, a federal law that limits the hours and types of work minors can perform. The FLSA applies unless a state law provides greater protections to young workers. Under Ohio law, minors aged 13 and younger are prohibited from employment. minors between the ages of 14 and 17 must obtain a work permit. Forms can be obtained through the Ohio Department of Commerce website. Contact your school district for more information. All workers under the age of 18 are entitled to a 30-minute rest break after 5 consecutive hours of work. Minors age 14 and 15 years old are prohibited from working before 7 a.m. or after 9 p.m. from June 1st to September 1st, or during any school holiday of 5 school days or more, or working after 7 p.m. at any other time. Working for more than 3 hours a day in any school day, working for more than 18 hours in any school week, working for more than 8 hours in any day when school is not in session, and working for more than 40 hours in any week that school is not in session or during school hours, unless employment is part of a bona fide program of vocational, cooperative training, work study, or other work-oriented programs with the purpose of educating students, and the program meets standards established by the State Board of Education. Minors aged 16 and 17 years of age who are required to attend school are prohibited from working before 7 a.m. on any day that school is in session, or 6 a.m. if the person was not employed after 7 p.m. the previous night, and working after 11 p.m. on any night preceding a day that school is in session. Ohio law prohibits the employment of minors under the age of 16 in certain occupations, including cooking, baking, construction, repair, and others, as well as operating certain types of equipment and machinery. A wide range of dangerous work is prohibited for all minors under the age of 18.
It's important that all of us stand up for our rights and the rights of others in our communities. If you believe a younger worker's rights have been violated on the job, you can file a complaint with the Ohio Department of Commerce, Division of Industrial Compliance and Labor, Bureau of Wage and Hour Administration, or the United States Department of Labor, Wage and Hour Division. If you need more information or assistance, contact the Central Ohio Worker Center. We can help.
Child labor laws were and remain necessary. It took many years to win these protections, and the work of our ancestors inspires us in our own communities today. But these laws alone don't address the problem of low wages experienced by many young and adult workers. In fact, many of the same people and organizations that fought to protect children in the workplace joined and supported the labor movement. The labor movement led the struggle to win the right to form labor unions so that all working people can receive good pay and benefits and safe and respectful working conditions.
What is a labor union? A labor union is an organization of working people who join together to achieve common goals at work, such as increased pay, better benefits, health and safety protections against COVID-19, and a more equal and mutually respectful relationship with their employer. Unionized employees then engage in collective bargaining with their employer, a process that permits them to use their collective bargaining power through social media, appeals to the public, informational picketing, and even strikes to obtain a legally binding contract with their employer.
Today, the right of workers to unionize is recognized by law. That was not always the case. Like the movement for civil rights in the United States, the movement to win the right to unionize was met with intense opposition and sometimes violence that spanned the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1877, a strike by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad workers against wage cuts unleashed what became known as the Great Upheaval. Over 100,000 workers participated in strike actions. Local and state militias were used to break the strike, and federal troops were deployed. Nearly 100 people were killed in the violence, and thousands of buildings and train cars were destroyed. In 1921, miners mobilized to unionize the southwestern West Virginia coal fields and were met by federal troops and private aircraft hired by mine owners that dropped bombs and gas.
Time and time again, ordinary working people, no different from us, young and old, white and persons of color, citizens and recent immigrants, risked and sometimes lost their jobs and even their lives to win the right to unionize. In 1934, 5 years into the Great Depression, general strikes broke out in Toledo, San Francisco, and Minneapolis as workers demanded fair pay, better working conditions, and recognition of their unions. Virtually every industry in the United States was impacted. Decades of struggle culminated in the passage of new labor laws that provide all working people with invaluable rights and protections.
The Railway Labor Act, or RLA, became law in 1926 and originally covered railroad workers only and was amended to include airline workers in 1936. The National Labor Relations Act, or NLRA, was signed into law in 1935 and covers all other private sector employees, excluding agricultural workers, independent contractors, and supervisory employees, with limited exceptions. Ohio's public sector collective bargaining law applies to Ohio government employees and was originally enacted in 1983. All three laws guarantee the right of employees to form unions and require employers to negotiate with unions that represent their employees. The NLRA not only protects the right to unionize, it also prohibits retaliation against individuals and groups of employees who complain to their employers about pay, benefits, safety and health issues, and other working conditions on behalf of coworkers. This is what's known as protected concerted activity, which is the right of employees to take collective action for their mutual aid and protection. Federal government employees also have the right to a union and bargaining rights specific to their sector. If you believe your employer has violated your rights under the National Labor Relations Act, you may want to consider filing an unfair labor practice charge against your employer with the National Labor Relations Board. Visit the NLRB's website at nlrb.gov or call 513-684-3686 and ask to speak with the Public Information Officer. As we've seen, some of our most important rights are the product of struggles dating back well over 100 years. The final portion of this video focuses on the movement for equal rights for Black Americans, with an emphasis on one of the most significant pieces of civil rights legislation ever passed in the United States, Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination in employment on the basis of race and skin color, among other characteristics.
We all have the right to live free from discrimination. The Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War ended slavery, but discrimination against Black Americans in the North and South continued in every aspect of life: economic, political, and social. Another 100 years would pass before federal laws were enacted prohibiting discrimination based on race in employment and guaranteeing Black Americans the right to vote. During that span of time, in the face of indifference and organized violence, individuals and groups resisted discrimination. They demanded equality, dignity, and respect. They made progress against tremendous odds, but it would take a mass movement to bring about fundamental and lasting changes.
The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s was made up of courageous working people and students, supported by a wide array of churches and organizations with visionary and highly effective leadership, beginning with Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat on a public bus the successful Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott from December 5, 1955 to December 20, 1956 is considered the first large-scale campaign against segregation. Over 40,000 black residents boycotted the city's segregated bus system until it agreed to desegregate. The NAACP played a critical role in the campaign, and a young member of the local clergy, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., would emerge as a new and inspirational voice for change. In 1960, students from Fisk University and their supporters led the successful campaign to desegregate lunch counters in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Despite violence against peaceful protesters and numerous arrests, the movement spread quickly across the South.
Diane Nash, a leader of the Nashville Campaign and other student activists with the support of the Southern Christian Leadership Council, formed the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in 1961. SNCC, including future Member of Congress, John Lewis, and the Congress for Racial Equality led by James Farmer, would organize the Multiracial Freedom Ride campaign to desegregate interstate transportation. In 1963, peaceful civil rights protesters, many of them children, were attacked by police dogs, hit with high-powered fire hoses, and arrested by the thousands in Birmingham, Alabama, in response to a campaign to desegregate the city. Dr. King would write the famous letter from Birmingham jail urging people of conscience to act against injustice. Later that year, 4 girls died in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. 1963 also witnessed 200,000 people participate in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Labor unions, including the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and the United Auto Workers, provided critical financial support and played a prominent role in the march. In 1964, SCLC, SNCC, CORE, and the NAACP, led by SNCC's Bob Moses, launched the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project to register voters and organize alternative freedom schools to segregated schools. Over 700 white college students traveled to Mississippi from the North to participate in the campaign. 3 civil rights workers, 2 white students from New York, Michael Schwerner and Andrew Goodman, and James Chaney, a local black man, were murdered after being arrested and released from jail.
In response to the strength of the movement and growing public support for change, President Lyndon Johnson signed the 1964 Civil Rights Act into law. Title VII of the Act prohibited discrimination in employment based on race and color. The new law also prohibited discrimination based on sex, religion, and national origin, and created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to investigate violations and enforce the new law. Title VII applies to employers with 15 or more employees. Federal civil rights laws also prohibit discrimination based on age and prohibit sexual orientation, disability, and veteran status discrimination. Ohio has a state civil rights law that applies to employers with 4 or more employees. The Ohio law generally prohibits discrimination for the same reasons as federal law.
Acts of illegal discrimination include, but are not limited to, not being hired, being disciplined or fired, being denied a raise or a promotion, being demoted or being harassed for a reason prohibited by a federal or state civil rights law, or being retaliated against for reporting discrimination in the workplace.
If you believe you are a victim of illegal discrimination, you can file a civil rights charge with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. You can also file a charge with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. There are strict time limits for filing state and federal civil rights charges. Visit eeoc.gov and crc.ohio.gov for more information.
We hope you found this video informative. These essential laws were not given to us. They were earned through the sacrifices made by countless people who came before us. Some of their names may have been forgotten, but their contributions to our history and our communities live on in the movements and the organizations they built and the laws they helped bring into existence. Now it's up to us to make sure these laws are enforced, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Central Ohio Workers Center has made additional materials and resources available on its website at centralohioworkerscenter.org. We also want to know if you found this video to be helpful and informative. Most importantly, we want to work with you on the workplace and community issues that matter to you. Please join COWC today or register for updates so we can stay in touch. We hold monthly meetings that are free and open to the public.